1917 is a gut punch of a movie, and it's one of the best movies I've seen this year alongside The Two Popes, which I did a review of earlier. And I'm kind of surprised, not to go off on too far of a tangent, but kind of surprised that The Two Popes is not sort of in that same field of view for the purposes of the Oscars as being nominated for Best Picture. But all that aside, 1917 is a fantastic movie, and it's one that you walk out of the theater really sort of dwelling on and thinking about and processing. Even though in its presentation it's really kind of a stark movie, and that's sort of Sam Mendes' directorial style. Very clean, very simple, does a lot of really interesting things with light and shadow, and there are a lot of themes at play in 1917. So I think anyone walking out of this movie is not going to be lost on the fact that it is, in a lot of ways, a very anti-war movie. That's not to say that it doesn't celebrate the heroes of World War I and other wars, and it even acknowledges this, in the concluding moments where it looks like one of Mendes' family members was part of that conflict. The brutality of war, the death that sort of envelops everything like a dark cloud, is sort of an ever-present theme, as you would imagine, in the movie. And so it's a movie that's not a sprawling war epic in the same vein of something like Saving Private Ryan. And I think for, all intents and purposes, in terms of sort of the best war movies ever made, for me, Saving Private Ryan is still sort of at the top of that mountain. But this is an excellent movie, and it's close to that in a lot of ways. It's a much more sort of narrowly focused, much more drilled down account of two soldiers who are being tasked to make it to the front lines to call off an attack so that they're not set up in a trap by German forces. These two British soldiers have to make it through hostile land, even though they've been told that the German forces have retreated, to get this message to a colonel who is about to undergo an attack and doesn't know what it is that he's sort of getting into and what's going to be waiting for him. But, as I mentioned earlier, Mendes does a fantastic job with this movie. And I can't recall if he's actually been nominated for Best Director. I would only imagine that he has. He would likely win based on the work that he's done here. And again, I'm saying that with sort of limited knowledge, not having seen a number of the other movies that are out there for Best Picture and the other directors who have been nominated for Best Director. But what he's able to accomplish here is astounding. And if you know anything about the movie, it's designed to be sort of taken in one take. And I can only imagine, of course, that they didn't film it in one take. That would be virtually impossible. But the way that it's brought together is sort of one long experience, sort of over the shoulder of these two soldiers as the movie sort of unfolds there. And I don't want to spoil anything in terms of what happens. Certainly go see it and appreciate it in that way. But the way that Mendes approaches this from that sort of single take perspective makes you feel immersed in it in a way that maybe would not have otherwise been possible. And it's really incredible the way that it plays out like that. There's one moment, I think, where it sort of breaks that wall briefly, where it kind of cuts to black at a certain point in the movie and then comes back. But for the most part, it is just sort of one take. And the only thing that I would say that may be a little bit distracting about that, and it didn't really cause a big issue for me, but knowing that it would be virtually impossible to do that, I was sort of one of those people who was looking for the seams, right? Trying to figure out where they stitch things together to make it seem so flawless in the way that it's assembled to appear that way. But the sort of quiet moments in the movie where these two soldiers are encountering different allies, different enemies, different sorts of things that happen really sort of make it feel like it has a necessary grounding in humanity that might not otherwise be present in the movie. And of course, the action in it is really good. And I would say that this is not an action movie just straight out, flat out from start to finish. It does have a lot of moments where it's kind of, trudging through muddy, war-torn lands, soaking in those settings, having moments of sort of muted conversation with one another. And so in that regard, it again makes it a little more relatable, and more than likely, I can only imagine, probably captures what it's like to be in that kind of trench warfare setting where there can be long periods of sort of waiting things out. Again, I think this is a fantastic movie, and it is one of the best movies I've seen this year. To me, it's easily a 10 out of 10. I love it. It's one of those movies that I love. I don't know that I would necessarily want to see multiple times, though I will probably revisit it when it comes out digitally. or on Blu-ray, just because technically I'm amazed by it. And I had referenced earlier the use of light and shadow. There's one sequence in particular where night has fallen, and there are flares that are being sent out and other fire that's taking place. But the way that Mendes frames that and the way that the shadows sort of fall across this war-torn town during that sequence is just kind of breathtaking, actually. It's a really well-made movie. It's got a great score, too, to sort of, I think bring those moments that are meant to have additional kind of emotional weight to the surface. So, again, a great movie. Of all the Oscar contenders that I've seen so far, this is the best one. I think Two Popes is up here, but 1917 is just an exquisite film. But as I said at the start of the review, kind of a gut punch. So going into it, you have to know that, and you would probably know this anyway, but going into it, you kind of know that it's not going to necessarily be a fun experience, but it is one that you can sort of marvel at and appreciate. So if you've seen 1917, let me know what you think about it. Let me know if you agree that it's probably got a really good shot of walking away with the Best Picture award, or with the Best Picture award. But just let me know your thoughts on it. As always, thanks for watching. I'll catch you again soon.